So how are you doing today, Charlie? Over there in Michigan, everything is going okay?
Everything is going well. The leaves are just starting to turn. They're really pretty.
It's, Michigan in the fall is some of my favorite time of the year. This year we don't have, I live right off campus here at Michigan State. So this year we don't have so much of campus stuff going on, but I've always loved the fall, the Big Ten. I know Shiva, over you near in California, we got, USC and UCLA, a lot of rivalry stuff going on in the Rose Bowl. So how are you doing out there in California?
Yeah, doing great, Austin. Except that now the new norm is we have to deal the wildfires.
I tell you.
The month of October is all about dealing with fires. So luckily, I'm at a place where I don't need to evacuate. So I'm happy about it.
All right, glad to hear that things are going okay there. So I know from my perspective, we don't have any of those wildfires out here, but we have our own share of cold weather coming up, which Charlie and I will have to put up with in the dead of winter here in January. So we're jealous of your year-round perfect weather. So, but maybe you can send some of it in the jet stream this way over to Michigan sometime.
I will
Right.
to tease you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you guys for joining in. We've got an audience joining in. Let's go ahead and get started, and then we'll keep things going. So, what we wanted to kind of have in this presentation was, there's a new phrase going out, data-driven digital ambition. So kind of what that means is data-driven is the result of being able to drive your organization's strategic operations or decisions based on data, being data-driven. Digital ambition is what is the goal of the organization? Where do they want to be? Where do they want to go? How do they want to do that? And in the most recent few years, data quality and data governance all of a sudden has bubbled up to the top again. So that's what we wanted to talk about today. And, we're excited that we have such a great audience, panel here prepared for us. So let's get the show on the road. Let me start by maybe just doing a quick round of introductions for those remote joining in. We thank you guys. I see a lot of folks, West Coast, East Coast, Central Time Zone. So thank you guys so much. As a reminder, we have questions at the very end, a Q&A session. So please feel free to pop in your questions and we'll be happy to respond to them at the very end. So on my webcam, to my left, we've got Shiva. He's from Biomarin, the company out there in the West Coast. And he and I have known each other for some time, worked in quite a few projects, but more importantly, he brings a great wealth of ERP experience, both from the business and the IT perspective. So he's not a one-trick pony, and we thank Shiva for joining us today. And in the middle here, we've got Charlie. He's the Vice President and CIO of ChainSys. And he comes to us with a lot of ERP, SAP, all these enterprise application type background. And in his years of having done mergers and acquisitions, all these things, a lot of interesting things have happened, and he has formulated a lot of his thoughts into a book, which we're going to plug here in just a moment. So stand by for that. But we're glad to have Charlie here. And myself, my name is Austin Davis. I'm part of the ChainSys product team. And we're excited that we have this opportunity to engage this great audience. This is a series of sessions that we've got going on with having your 30 minutes. In the first session, we kind of did an overview. We talked about, what are the three pillars. The next session, we kind of talked about get clean. What is the importance, how to do that. This session is really going to be focused on stay clean, which is right on the governance. So let's get right into it. And if you're on the other end of this, feel free to note down this link. We're going to send it out again. If you see Ask Charlie, we made him into our mascot and logo. He's such a good-looking guy. So we're excited about that. And actually, Charlie looks exactly like that when he puts on his glasses and his hat. So he does look like that. So we're excited that you guys can see that. But more importantly, it's the Master Data Simplified book that he has put together, which resonates with the audience, both from the business and the IT perspective. So If you'd like a copy of that, please reach out to us. We're happy to send it over to you in standard mail. If you'd like to download it, the link is available. Please have a look at it. If you miss anything on this session, you don't want to listen to anything that we have, at least read that book. That gives you a lot of great information on where to go and what to do next. All right, so let's get this discussion started. Let's start off with Shiva. Let's ask you kind of what role you play at Biomarin. Maybe you can start from there.
Sure. Thanks, Austin. So the role I play in Biomarin, I lead the supply chain side of the business applications. So anything order to cash, procure to pay, inventory planning, all the solutions under the belt of supply chain is managed by me and my team. And what Biomarin does, Biomarin is a leader in developing innovative for biopharma pharmaceuticals for diseases driven by genetic causes. So our focus is to develop best-in-class therapeutics that provide meaningful advances to patients who live with serious and life-threatening rare genetic diseases. So the majority of these patient populations are all children's mostly, who are suffering from these rare genetical disorders. And sometimes some of our patient populations are only around few thousand people. But I think that's the space Biomarin plays in. So we really support these rare genetic disorders, and that's a drug Biomarin manufactures.
Wonderful. We really appreciate such organizations in existence today, especially in today's time where we have so much going on all over the globe. And the focus of this organization is very specific, as Shiva mentioned. But more importantly, we're glad that there's a data component to this. Every organization, no matter what they do, there's a business and IT engagement. And my experience with Biomarin has been extremely positive. The business and the IT teams are very closely connected. They're not dissociated, which is one of the interesting reasons why, and this will come out in our discussion, why this project was successful. So, your background is kind of in supply chain. Tell us a little bit, Shiva, and we'll bring Charlie into the conversation in a second, but tell us a little bit about the master data, how that fits into your business, and then, you can kind of build more broadly on that.
Sure, yeah. From master data, the master data that supply chain deals with this customer item supplier. So these are like an enterprise-wide master data, but we do have, we call this as level tier 1, and we have tier 2 data like recipe, formulas, all of it. But just sticking to the tier 1 master data, like why it's critical. I mean, if you just take a customer, for example, customers are directly tied to the revenues and sales. So you don't want to mess up with your sales and revenue in any organization. Doesn't matter whether it's a life science or any company. So we want to make sure the data that we have in the system is reliable, well governed, correct, and it's flowing into the transactional things like sales orders and invoices as correctly as possible, so that we invoice our customers on time, on a timely basis, and we recognize the revenue on a timely basis. So again, I can take each of those master data and explain the criticality, but master data is kind of the backbone for any transactions that we do in ERP. So that's where the criticality of master data comes in from the supply chain perspective.
Wonderful. Let's kind of turn this question upside down. Let's kind of look at it from the risk and mitigation perspective. So you mentioned a little bit on how the data flows through supply chain, customers. We can impact sales, revenue. It's a key driver for every organization. Now let's turn it entirely the upside down, and let's see what, Charlie, what are your thoughts on maybe the typical risks and even mitigations before we get to a successfully done project like what Shiva's? What should people be thinking about because there's a lot of rumors out there. Even what the Gartner pointed out, that 80% of the folks who are going to take on this type of an engagement, they're going to have a lot of challenges. So what should they be thinking about? Should they be looking for?
Well, one of the key risks of any MDM project is trying to do everything at once. You need to concentrate on a specific area and avoid projects that take forever. Scope creep will be an issue, and you want to be able to derive benefit as soon as possible from your efforts. It's much easier with a focused effort. So basically what you want to do, you want to think big, but you want to start small. You can fine-tune the project on an annual basis to improve data policies and customer experience, but you can't do it all at once. And second, and this is critical, MDM has to be a joint effort between the business and IT, supported by technology. If it's perceived as an IT project, at best, MDM will not provide all the benefits it should, and at worst, the MDM project will be a complete failure. MDM needs to be business-owned with IT support.
Wonderful. A lot of this information is essentially straight out of the book that you put together. Let's kind of flip this over back to Shiva. You talked about one thing, and well, actually, you talked about a couple of things, but one was the ROI, right? Being able to get this so that the business can see the value right away. And then long term, looking ahead into what are some of the business advantages of having this type of governance process in play. Maybe Shiva, take that part one, part two, maybe help us to process that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. I think what Charlie said, I couldn't agree with that more. MDM is a business-driven initiative and supported by the technology group. So that's exactly how we did our customer master. Like we had a team on the business side, and we know this 12 weeks is going to be. When we went and presented this 12-week plan to the leadership team, both from the technology and the business team, trust me, no one was very confident in the room.
They must have thought you were a little crazy.
Yeah. So they were all thinking, and it was also towards the end of the year. So people thought like they're just trying to be crazy and do something. Like no one was even ready to sign up on the initiative. But I think the thing what we did well, we did good planning, and we had strong business partnership, like exactly knowing what is that we are going to achieve out of this 12-week engagement. So we put in our wireframes, we put in our governance rules, we know which is a team is going to initiate the data, which are the teams going to enrich the data, and what exactly they're enriching. So all of these business rules were well written and well vetted by all the stakeholders who are going to be part of this whole governance process. So once we had all of those planning and the requirements and the business rules spelled out, clearly articulated, vetted, then when we get into the design and execution, it was almost like I would say it's a boring project. Even though it was 4 weeks, but we were we used to have the daily scrum calls, and definitely we were changing a few things here and there, but to our surprise, how much of the effort that we put in the initial part of the project in doing all these business rules and the wireframes, it really helped us have a smooth design and the execution phase. So that's kind of what we even started using that as a methodology for all other projects, the future projects that Biomarin did. So this was used as a case study for a lot of other projects.
Wow, what a resounding endorsement for doing exactly what Charlie suggests. Let's turn it upside down again. Let's kind of look at this from Charlie's perspective. What do you think, Charlie, about some of these things that they're working on? More importantly, let me phrase the question in such a way. Everybody thought that the Biomarin team was a bit on the crazy side for trying to do a 12-week project. So that is number one. But I think more importantly, when Shiva brings out some of the necessary pre-planning and details, getting the business involved, these kinds of things, help us to kind of unpack all of that and bring that together.
Yeah, there certainly was a time when I would have told Steve he's crazy if he's considering doing it in 12 weeks. So that's things certainly have changed. I think business testing in sprint cycles is one of the ways that really helps the business take advantage of a configurable platform, and it allows them to do rapid prototyping. So it's an iterative process, and it will reduce the surprises you have in go live. Another area is defining data templates. Defining data templates is a time-consuming task in any MDM project. Now, ChainSys fast tracks this process by providing predefined templates which can be customized should the need arise. So in this case, the Oracle customer template was used to quickly map data. Because the data, or the focus was on the data itself instead of the technical issues with identifying data formats, the business was able to own the data day one, and that's extremely important. So not only did the predefined template streamline the process, they also ensured the business was intimately involved from day one, owning the data.
Wonderful, and I think that's, to me, the number one driver for all of this stuff, right? We can, maybe one day, Shiva and I and you will be talking about how we can do this in 6 weeks or 9 weeks, right? We can iterate to that. But the idea that the business has from day one quite a bit of ownership. I remember some of those early calls where, the business was kind of having heated discussions about who owns what, but the discussion was around the data and how to get this to be successful, and not about the product and all of these things. In the end, we all understand that MDM really is a journey. It is not about the software. It's really more focused about the process and the business. So let's bring it back to Shiva. Let's talk to you a little bit about, this was done 12 weeks, in 12 weeks, several years ago. And you've mentioned that over each year, you've done tweaks and iterations, maybe some feature requests that the business has asked for. So tell us a little bit about, bring us up to date. What has happened, and maybe what you're thinking about going forward.
Sure. So I think the first thing we felt the immediate or the initial go live advantage was we found a tremendous improvement in the overall process. Like creating a customer was so easy to the business, and it's all they have. Earlier compared to the process what we had earlier, and with the new governed process what we had through AppMDM, it's like a sea change. And then the second advantage we recognized was the whole governance workflow what we had with an AppMDM. It's so easy to configure, and so if you have to enrich, make a change to an enrichment, like we have to add a couple more fields, or we have to bring in, like initially when we rolled out, we only had like 4 approval groups, and then we implemented eBIS tags, so we have to introduce some additional fields and additional approval workflow. All of that was done, so it was kind of a configure, plug and play thing. I can imagine if we have to do such a change in an ERP system, we have to go through a lot of development testing cycles, but it was much easier to enhance the whole governance workflow with an AppMDM. And in general, the quality of our data improved a lot. Like every data that's getting into our ERP was always well vetted through the governance process, whatever we had in AppMDM. So it helped us to get the data clean, and also since AppMDM was the only source of entry for all the customer data, it helped us to have the data stay clean as well. So those are some of the long-term benefits we have been cashing on. And of course, enhancing the front-end capabilities. Like over the years, we have made some improvements to the workflows, as well as some of the front-end reporting capabilities with an AppMDM, which immensely benefited the stakeholders who are using this product.
Wonderful. What I really appreciate about what you talked about just now is that there's an iterative approach to this. It's not no software is the perfect solution. It never will be. But what I appreciated about what you said was the business owned everything, and from their process, they were able to make improvements on an iterative basis. So in your case, I think it was maybe every couple of quarters or every year, something like that. Let's kind of rewind this all the way to, or let's not rewind, let's fast forward this all the way to the very end. We've got about a little under 10 minutes left. So let's go to the perspective. Shiva, you know somebody or an audience member here, they're thinking about doing something crazy. It's almost the same time of the year, October. They want to do MDM in 12 weeks. Okay. What should they be thinking about? Let's summarize it for them so they get these little nuggets and then something to think about.
Sure. So definitely 12 weeks is an achievable target. I mean, I would go with that positive mindset provided you have app MDM. I think one of the biggest thing I know we have not talked in any of our earlier conversation, the integration from app MDM to Oracle, we never spent any time testing that part. I mean, it was always working. Like we did some testing for it, but in a lot of these similar projects where we are trying two systems to talk, integration was a pain point. And with this whole app MDM platform, because they are so gelled within the Oracle suite of products, we didn't spend much time at all validating those integrations or testing those integrations because it was all working as expected. So our majority of the focus was around configuring the tool and making sure the front end, the workflows are all working. So my suggestion to anyone who's going to venture into this journey, spend a good amount of week for the first 2-3 weeks doing the planning. Where what I mean is planning is putting the right business team, right stakeholders who needs to be part of the governance process, identifying those teams, waiting out the requirements, make sure all the different scenarios are captured and what kind of data enrichment they have to do, sit and document those, because that's one of the, I mean, those are the things that takes a lot of time. If you are in the design and in the iterative testing phase, you can make changes, but how much ever you can, I mean, app MDM is a plug and play configure tool, so you can still make changes on the fly. But I think from a business user perspective, it's important you kind of sit through it, document those rules and document your requirements in a very comprehensive manner before walking into the execution phase of it. But again, like I said earlier, app MDM is more of a plug and play tool. You can still make changes on the fly when you're in your design and iterative phase, but take that initial planning phase little seriously and make sure you align, you have identified the right stakeholders, you have captured all of your business requirements, and then walk into the design and the execution phase.
Wonderful. It's terrific information. You know, let me add a little bit into the requirements. You know, I remember being in some of those early meetings a few years ago with you, and you know, the hardest thing that I had with our team was to actually, Shiva, to tell you and your team, no, we cannot do this, because the requirements just kept coming in, right? Can we do this? Can we change this? Can we add this, right? So I really appreciate what Charlie said earlier, which is, you know, think big, but you know, start with the small stuff. Get it done, and really makes sense. Have those wire diagrams done. The business has agreed. This is what we're going to do. And yes, we can make those tweaks as you go into testing and make those improvements. But the process, underlying process, has to really work for the business. So to me, those are the takeaways. Let's kind of jump towards Charlie here. Let's zoom back here a little bit. Let's forget about process, forget about all this stuff. Let's look at it from the data perspective. So you've written this book. It talks a lot about MDM and governance. Tell us a little bit about data from your CIO perspective.
Well, there's certainly the standard saying garbage in, garbage out. The strategy for MDM has to be to get clean and then to stay clean, and they're equally important. Some of the products that are available are extremely complex licensing, and quite expensive. Cost cutting is going to be even more important in a post-COVID environment, and convincing management to spend big bucks to address issues they probably don't fully understand is going to be a challenge. you definitely want to use a tool to reduce the time to deploy. Whoever tool you use, but you need to use a tool. And the other thing you should be doing, looking at, is getting the supplier to do a proof of concept to demonstrate their product can do what they say it can do in the time frame they specified. If the POC is successful, you got a head start. If not, you've avoided a huge waste of time and resources. The Master Data Simplified book attempts to simplify master data management concepts, and the guidelines for implementation and tool evaluation are all vendor agnostic.
Wonderful. Charlie, what I really appreciate out of that is, not plugging a specific solution, but an approach. And that's an approach that can work for anyone. Shiva went to his management team with the crazy idea several years ago to do this in 12 weeks, and then they did it. And now he mentioned that's become a template. Let me take just 30 seconds and plug ChainSys a little bit, and why this solution seems to work well for many of these organizations. Shiva mentioned they didn't have to do any testing on the integration side. So ChainSys comes with all of these ready-made adapters, so we can connect into the Oracles of the world, the Oracle Cloud Solutions, the SAPs, Microsoft Dynamics. All these listings are out there. I won't go through all of them. But the idea is we want you to be able to focus in on your real business need, the requirement of the day. Narrow it down into a chunk that you can deliver. Think big, but execute small towards that. And we found that 12-week timeline seems to work really well for many businesses. It's an amount that can be chunked up in a work breakdown structure and successfully executed. So I would encourage everybody to think about this as an approach. Talk about how this can be a successful conclusion and reach to the business, but at the very same time, the business needs to be engaged at the very kind of my quick hit takeaway. If you have any other thoughts you'd like to add, Shiva or Charlie, please feel free. We've got a couple of minutes left. If not, Vino, I think I saw some questions popping in. We can certainly try to answer a couple of those. I think we have 3 minutes left.
Yeah, Austin, I was about to interrupt you and just ask for is the right question. But so can we start with the question, Austin?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Yeah. So one customer asking for, what is this same customer has different addresses in the 3 different sites?
Okay, so this probably talks to, I'll take this question. It probably talks to data harmonization. So in this scenario, or let's say address standardization. So maybe you have 3 hypothetical customers, the same customer with 3 dissimilar names. So how you need to figure out combining all of those or repurposing different addresses out of each one to make one unified customer record is probably where they're thinking about going. The second piece to that is if they have different addresses, actually just using one of those services, depending on which region of the world you're in, but let's say for the US side, either standardizing based on Dun & Bradstreet or US Postal, Google, Salesforce. They all have good solutions out there, but subscribing to one of those and standardizing the addresses, that'll really actually help you to ensure, as Charlie pointed out, the stay clean process. You're not reintroducing bad data into the system after you've established a process. So if you want more information about how to go about doing that, Charlie's book would be a terrific resource. It has a lot of that information out there. I think we have time for maybe one more question, Vinod.
Sure, Austin. Let me have this question. Could make most relevant.
Okay.
Will workflows be used to manage approval cycles? Will parallel or serial approvals workflows be utilized? If in case complex, can you explain? Would be helpful.
Okay, so there's a lot in there. Essentially talks about workflow and governance of the workflows. Maybe if I were to take some of the information that Shiva spoke about earlier, each organization, each team, they need to have their established workflow. This could be driven from a product perspective, from a region perspective. So you may have approvers at that level. And one of the ways the ChainSys platform really helps is we have parallel and serial approval processes and groups. So you can establish a group. Within a group, you could have one or many approvers. You can ensure that you can either have a serial process within that, or you can have a parallel process. So both of those are scenarios that would be good for most businesses. And we even have introduced in the latest version of the platform something called matrix approvals. So if you know that for this product, for this region, these are the approvers, all of that can be tabulated into a sheet, loaded into the system, and the system will derive the approval group out of that. So, and then you follow the standard parallel or serial. So a lot of interesting things are happening, essentially geared towards the business. How does the business want this to work for them more efficiently, faster, so that the SLAs that the business may have in mind can be adhered to? Maybe they have I want to load a customer into the system within a couple of hours. So these are some things that are entirely possible. And again, it's going to be from the business perspective, how we can enable them from a technology perspective. So ultimately, the business owns these approvals, they own the SLAs, and they also own the data. But can the solution meet that expectation? And we're happy to say that ChainSys has a lot of these tools, plus many others, available to you. So to those of you out there who are on this webinar, thank you so much for joining us for 30 minutes well spent. I really hope that you've learned a lot from the business perspective, from what Shiva and his organization was able to bring to this. And at the same time, we have all the different strategic leadership type things that Charlie brought in, and we appreciate that. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us remotely. And again, if you would like to see our book, or Charlie's book, I should say, please don't hesitate to come to our website. You can download it or request a copy of it. You're more than welcome to email Charlie if you have any specific question. And if you have anything else, you can also reach out to myself, austin.davis@chainsys.com. And we want to thank Vinod for producing this webinar today. So for everybody on the other side, please stay safe. Have a wonderful day wherever you are today, whether it's day, night, or somewhere in between. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.